Welcome to the Empowered Life podcast with Dustin Vaughn Warncke. Join Dustin as your guide to learning about unlocking your life's ultimate potential. Through inspiring conversations with special guests and proven wisdom, Dustin explores the interconnected values of personal growth, professional success, and a wholesome life filled with love and light. This show is based on tactical and practical concepts for life's greatest successes and achieving your goals, while also being full of inspiration to help you live your best life right now. Discover how to cultivate a mindset of empowerment, achieve success, and create a meaningful impact on the world around you, all while living with purpose, meaning, and significance. Dustin is a former associate publisher of Texas Fish and Game magazine, the author of over 10 books, owner of his own digital marketing agency, an outdoor TV show host, a video and podcast producer. And he will also become one of your best friends forever. Now, get ready to get inspired to live in gratitude. Here's your host, Dustin Vaughn Warncke.
Thank you guys so much for joining us and doing this on TikTok Live. Those of you guys that are joining me live, I'm not hard to find on TikTok at my full name. So not just my full name, but at Dustin Vaughn Warncke. And you can find my link tree as well on dustinsprojects.com, which is my main kind of creator hub, if you will. And then I have a business website for what I do professionally at businesswithdustin.com. So if you know anybody that needs tech help or hardware, software issues, there's not much I don't know. I call myself a full stack or full service marketing agency in one person, So anyway, fun to be with you guys. Thank you guys so much. I hope y'all like my awesome glowing microphone here that has the RGB thing on it. I think that's awesome. Thank you guys again. I am bringing this to you semi-live, kind of in the aftermath of the flooding that we had here in Central Texas. The situation, you hear about Kerrville, of course. That's been all over the news and everything like that. I work in the exotic, world, and have for, several, many years as an adult. And I have a friend of mine that I do exotic sales for. He's one of my clients as well, but one of my best friends. And so I'm very familiar with Kerrville. Been there a number of times, and so I know the city, the resilience that those people have. But what a horrible kind of freak thing that happened, where in some areas we got lots more than 8 inches in 24 hours of rain. Unbelievable, just unprecedented rainfall, and then a whole bunch of, it was like a domino effect, like a perfect storm, if you could say that about it. Where just a lot of things just kind of came to a head, if you will, came to fruition quite fast, and nobody really expected it. It caught a lot of people off guard. Of course, some people are blaming the government, some people are blaming the emergency services. I'm not blaming. Just things happen. Okay, life happens. Okay, and the kids especially, a lot of people are talking about the kids in the summer camp and in Kerrville, and how that was just so horrible. Those kids had their whole life in front of them, yes. But at the same time, I know they're also in a good place, where they ended up. They were part of a Christian camp, I can do the math on that, but that's not for me to judge, and that's not me to say that was this an act of God, because you consider a lot of times floods and other natural disasters an act of God. Well, I mean, the world is definitely, not a perfect place. You will never be free of problems. We face tragic losses, whether it's financial, whether it's emotional, in a relationship, whether it's familial or romance or friendship. We also face, a lot of other issues with work and school and everything else like that. Our life's never going to be problem-free. And I always say it like this, that you're either coming into a crisis, you're in the middle of a crisis, or you're coming out of a crisis, okay? The fact that people don't care how much you know about anything unless they know how much you care. And the fact that treating a situation like this, which affected me very, very, very close to where I live right now, with empathy, with love, with compassion, okay, is what I want to talk about, is when disaster strikes, when the worst possible thing happens, okay? Because you may not face the worst possible thing that could happen. You may have been saved from the worst possible thing that could happen, and other people may have died because of it. and the thing is, like, you can't, you can't have an easy life and then a life of personal growth at the same time. You can have one or the other. You can't have both. And I've always chosen the personal growth, the taking the stairs instead of the elevator in life, so to speak. And I try to, with every tragedy around me, with every disaster, my son Jackson's mom and I met at the flood in 1998 in New Braunfels. We were at the kind of the flood release as two college students, just kind of volunteering, and that's how her and I got to know each other. And that's later on we had Jackson, who is the love of my life and the best kiddo ever. In my opinion, he calls me the best dad ever, and I'm humbly grateful for that, Jackson, if you're listening to this. And, I'm just thinking, like, it really reframes the perspective of what I talked about on the last live that I did, for those of you guys that were in here, that we all lose everything at the end. As depressing as that might sound, at the end of our life, we got to push all of our chips in the middle of the table, and we cash out. Somebody else will own all your stuff. Let's call it 100 years from now, no matter how old you are listening to this. Okay, 100 years, we'll all be buried together somewhere. All right? So this goes back to the last podcast that I did live, to the Marcus Aurelius quote, which is basically, what are you worried about losing when you own ultimately nothing? Which is kind of a paraphrase of that quote, okay? This time that we're in right now is borrowed time. We don't know. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. All right? I'm not saying the world's going to end or turn into a giant ball of fire, but, like, the whole thing is, civil unrest. You have a country that's more divided than ever. I mean, things are challenging. But back in the 90s, we had a lot of issues, too, when I was, my son's age. And, but the whole thing is, throughout my life, I've always been the one that's been curious and trying to learn the lessons that life is teaching me in every experience, whether I am observing that experience or I'm directly involved in that experience. Since Jackson has been alive, and he's 15 now, I have made it a goal of every single day to learn something new. Most of you guys that have listened to any of my other stuff or read any of my other books or anything like that, know that. But, like, that has been my goal, is just, learn something new. And that's how I ended up graduating with a music degree and being a, owner of a digital marketing company, But either way, say all that to say that, life is a great teacher. YouTube, you can learn just about anything, how to put shocks on your Corvette on YouTube these days, and I learned a lot of stuff just by because I had clients and friends and that kind of stuff that needed me to figure things out. And that's how I picked up all the knowledge that I have in my 8-pound brain right now. But the thing is, you look at a situation and it's absolute disaster that nobody expected, just came out of the blue, and you think, wow. I did a post on Facebook the other day that kind of brought to light, what's going on here in Sandy Creek Ranches, which is the area I live in. And just down the road from us, less than half a mile, that's where it begins. And you drive through it for at least a mile. I'm getting ready to drive through it in the morning, on my way to go see a client. And it looks like a war zone. It looks like a bomb went off. And I don't mean just a bomb. I mean like an atomic bomb. I mean, there's brush all over the place. You can watch the news and see some of this stuff. I posted some pictures on my Facebook page. It's public. Follow me while you're there. I don't care. I'm not your dad again. But the whole idea is it's just mind-blowing that there were trees there. There's still a Chevy Suburban or Tahoe, I can't tell which one it is by the size of the back of it, but that's stuck in a ditch on one of the main roads that we cross, to get up to where I live. And I was very blessed to be on higher ground. My landlord out here has volunteered with his tractor, with some people that he knows down there, and some other relief efforts, and kind of helped out with his tractor. He just has a tractor out here on this 2 acres, and went right into action. Very, very, very helpful person. And the people that he was helping, some of the people that he was helping, I had lunch with the other day, and they were in pretty good spirits, but at the same time, all that they had was gone. Everything just was washed down the creek. And it's just kind of like nature's junk removal service in a lot of these areas, because there was a lot of areas that needed to be cleaned up, and there's nothing there now. And, I don't say that jokingly. I'm just like, it was all there the day before, and then it's all gone. Like, I mean, how do you cope with that? But then at the same time, you think, okay, this world is temporary. Time is not guaranteed as far as like having tomorrow. What's the lesson? Okay. These children were lost, and their parents sent them off to summer camp. Awful. Most everybody I talked to, that's like the worst part of this flood. But then a lot of other children and adults were just swept away without warning. And we're talking to the point here where I noticed, literally less than a mile away from where I'm recording this right now, we are talking about people who like went to bed and woke up and all their stuff's down the river. Like their motorcycles, their Sea-Doos, their ATVs, their side-by-sides, golf carts, boats, everything like that. It's just gone, just swept away. And they're lucky that, there's water in their place, and they've got to evacuate. And actually yesterday being Sunday, there was some flash flooding, like, of course, hyper sensitive to rain right now with all that happened. And, the sheriff's department down here evacuated so many places and that kind of stuff. But out of that, those of us that didn't get, lose everything or, didn't get killed in this, you think about the brevity of life, the fact that nothing's guaranteed. And, no matter how much money you have, you can't beat the great equalizer that all this is temporary. Every bit of this is temporary. The time is temporary. The fact that things, as far as like what you're trying to accomplish out there, the things you're chasing after, okay, they'll be different in 5 years. You'll have different goals. I don't have a 5-year plan. That surprised a lot of people as goal-oriented and everything that I am now. It's one day at a time. I, of course, have plans for the future and goals of things that I'd like to do, but there's no bucket list here. Because, again, I don't want to set expectations that I'm not going to be able to reasonably attain. And once I feel I'm reasonably able to attain those things, then that's what I'm going to set as my next goal. But that'll be a short-term goal. As far as long-term goals, staying healthy and being the best dad that I can be, the best father. Taking care of my own household, which I recently moved into at the end of January of this year, and in a little tiny home space here, and just being present more in the moment and enjoying each moment as it passes. I recently had a friend of mine kind of turn me on to just enjoy the moment, enjoy the time that we're spending together right now. And that was really, really meaningful. This is all that you have, is the time you're listening to me or watching me, regardless of where you're consuming this. The idea is that none of this is guaranteed. You may not wake up tomorrow. Somebody you love may not wake up tomorrow. So what I've been telling everybody that's been asking about the families and that kind of stuff that I know in this area, I was like, go home and hug your kids, because there's a lot of parents that didn't get to hug their kids after they sent them off to camp. It came out of nowhere. Hug your mom, your dad if they're still alive. Okay? Don't hold grudges, okay? I've got one client that I'm actually going to go tomorrow to help with a Zoom call, and she's part of one of the foundations I do consulting with, and she's 81 years old, has had a stroke, brain cancer, and colon cancer, and still kicking, and she dresses to the nines. She dresses like a professional should dress, very, very classy woman at 81 years old with half of her body almost not working. She is resilient. She's tough. She does not give up. She did not just say, oh, God, take me, or whatever, And then in return of that, I have a client, the other side of that is I have a client that stays with me sometimes because she lives way down in Austin, and doesn't like to drive at night and everything like that. And I help her with tech stuff, and I'll let her sleep in my other bedroom, and just stay here overnight. Just a client sleeping the night at the other room, and she wakes up and is like, oh, just moaning and groaning about how hard life is and how mad she is at this administration and the past administration and the politics and the podcast and all the things that she just consumes so she can feed her bias of the way that things she perceives are, okay? When in reality, she's way off course, in my opinion. But at the same time, I don't get involved in politics in that respect, as far as having sharing my opinion about that, except for a select few people, because Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and those convinced against their will are of the same opinion still. But what I'm saying is concentrate, like I talk about all the time on the show, concentrate on the few things that matter. Your faith, your family, your job to some degree. But again, if you work for somebody, chances are you're expendable and can be replaced. Okay, there's no guarantee you're going to be there forever either. That's why you should never borrow against your 401k. You don't know when you'll be let go or have to, be disabled or something and can't pay it back. There's just so many things that come to mind of the fact that you don't know how long you have. Make every day count. That's so cliche. You hear that stuff in personal growth and stuff all the time, almost, ad nauseum. But it's just like, you go through seeing areas that had houses on them, like right down the road from me. I'm literally like, I could walk down there comfortably, and nothing's there. I mean, there's just brush everywhere, and it's going to take years to recover from this. It's going to take years for Kerrville, out, 2 hours away from me, to recover from this. But I'm in Northwest Leander, kind of the edge of the Northwest Austin metro suburbs, and like out in the country, and nobody saw this coming. You don't know how long you have. There is no guarantee of anything in life. Okay, the one thing you have to rely on that stays the same is God. And, that's the one thing why I believe that faith is so important, because faith is the reason why I'm sitting here on this microphone talking to you. Faith is the reason why, I get up every morning, and that is my why, is that I believe I have a mission and a purpose to bless other people in my own special, unique way, just like you do. Okay. And like I say, nobody is going to beat the fact, except for, Jesus, I guess, if you think about, like, resurrect from the dead, as far as, nobody beats death. He died, for 3 days, and death's a great equalizer. Like, that's a great thing, because I guess one of the most inspirational things that came out of this flood here locally here in Northwest Leander and Sandy Creek Ranches is down the road for us, the gentleman I was telling you that my landlord was helping, Daryl, and his wife Megan, they were, basically, I don't think that they were around, like they were staying on their place when this came through. So they didn't, like, nobody was lost in their family or anything like that. But we talk a lot about on the show legacy, right? What legacy do you want to leave behind when you eventually have to, push your chips in the middle of the table and check out? What legacy do you want to leave for your children's children, your grandchildren's children, okay? As long as humanity exists, that carries on throughout the generation. What legacy do you want to leave for those who come after you and who survive you? And I don't know what Daryl's dad's name was, but Rodney would tell me the stories. My landlord, he'd say, Dustin, people would come by. People just came in droves to this guy's property, to Daryl's property, after they heard what happened, after the news kind of spread around. And he, it wasn't for Daryl. It was because his dad, who had passed away some years ago, did something nice for them when they were in their time of need. All right? So an example is, one guy shows up with a chainsaw, and he said, your dad, fixed my tractor when I had no money. And I'll never forget that. And this is like, 40 years ago, right? They were there to pay it back forward to the son because of the dad's legacy. And that was one of the most special parts of this absolute, dumpster fire of a disaster, of all this flooding and all the destruction that it left behind, the creeks and all the low water crossing areas rising, where, like, it blew away the guardrail, and there's a Chevy Suburban in the ditch still. It's a reminder. All right. Make today count. Be important to somebody's life. Life is too short to sit there and hold grudges and be angry and be dramatic, drama all the time. That's not my thing, okay? I'm not a dramatic person. I get excited and passionate, especially when I can record in front of, an audience like this, but I am not like some kind of, holier than thou, whatever, like, the Bible says, and that's not me, okay? That's just not me. I mean, I understand, Scripture's important. Scripture's very important, okay? The Bible, Word of God and everything, but, how do you apply it to your life? What good are any of the parables and the stories of the Bible if they're not applied practically to your life. I call it practical and tactical. What ways are you going to use the Word of God or whatever, your faith walk is, to live a better life? Otherwise, what's the use of reading it? You know what I'm saying? I mean, just, okay, God said this. Okay, great. So, okay. It's just like reading, I forget what book in the Old Testament is just like, oh, you're just like, oh, you almost fall asleep, but the thing is, like, get something out of what you read, whether it's, Holy Scriptures or, of your chosen religion or, or of something inspirational, a book, an audio book, an ebook on your Kindle reader or, a podcast, anything like that. Like, the whole idea is just get inspired, to live your best life now. And I'm not doing the whole Joel Osteen, prosperity gospel thing. That's not me. But I am saying I'm real life. All right. I tell it as it happens. And I'm eyewitness here to a horrible tragedy. And, seeing the resilience, the amount of volunteers, aside from the story I told you about Daryl with all these people coming, just droves of people coming to help because his dad, not him, his dad helped them when they were in need. They were paying it back because he paid it forward decades ago. These people still remembered the kindness that his dad showed. That's the deeper meaning of why to be a kind person, okay? Loving kindness, okay? And, how to be compassionate and empathetic, okay? Make a difference. Be a listening ear. Be a shoulder for somebody to cry on, okay? Don't be sitting there spewing hate like some people in my life do. I mentioned earlier, that, oh God, life is so hard. And, a lot of people live their lives that work a 9 to 5, and I work way more than 9 to 5 as far as, my schedule goes. But I work all times, days or night. It just depends on my mood and what I want to get done. But, here's the thing. Like, you can choose to have a good day or you can choose to have a bad day. All right? You can't choose both. Just like I said earlier about the other stuff. Like, you can choose all these different emotions. You can choose, and it goes back to Viktor Frankl, and I think that he originated the quote, and I attributed it in one of my podcasts and one of my books to Friedrich Nietzsche, who was actually an atheist. But, Viktor Frankl, Jewish concentration camp survivor. And the Nazi government at the time, or the Nazi regime, that had these people huddled in this, the Jews, they were, committing genocide against, they would do awful things to just break their spirit. And Victor decided in that, I think a psychologist or psychiatrist, something like that, this is back, during World War II, when the Nazis and the Germans were invading all over the place, Victor said, you can beat me, you can hurt me, you can do, psychological, terror on me or whatever, but you can't break my spirit. And one of the guys I heard recently, he who has a why to live can endure almost any how. I'll say that again. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Okay? I don't even say almost. I think that if you're to it, you can get through it. I'm living proof. I am a walking, talking testimony, right? Well, maybe not walking right now, but testimony, okay? Talking testimony on this microphone right now of faith, okay? Of God's provisions, okay? And again, you have to believe and you have to trust, and that's the hardest part, is waiting, the patience for something to come to fruition, because God's timing is way different than our timing, but God's timing is also perfect in its own unique way. And as I mentioned on some previous shows, the one thing I've recently been doing, so a pastor that I follow here on TikTok, he recorded a short and he said, if you put it all in God's hands and just release it from like your control, like, still do what you've got to do every day, but like let God have control of your problems and the situation you're in and everything like that. God is ultimately responsible for the outcome. And in my experience is that God not only is responsible for the outcome, but he is responsible for our God. I don't say he or she, God is both, but he's also responsible for blessings that you never expected from places you never expected, okay? And back to the disaster area here, seeing the community and what I call NGOs or non-governmental organizations come together like they have and work with the local government. HEB has a disaster relief area close by at one of the churches, okay? Good use for a church in a disaster. They've turned that into kind of a temporary shelter. There's other, shelter areas all over the place that are started by faith-based nonprofit groups and everything like that. I had an atheist friend of mine say the other day, trying to challenge me with my belief in my faith in God. And I said, well, the reason I'm driving this vehicle is because of my faith. The reason I survived the nightmare that I endured here with it recently and just emerged with this hope and started this podcast and all this other stuff. Like, it's because I believed. It's because I trusted in God, and God has never let me down. Not once. I'll just say that in front of all of you guys. If you trust, not take it away, not be Peter on the water when he's walking and, he disbelieves for a second and then he falls into the ocean, in the storm. No. You've got to trust. That's the hardest thing to do for humans. It's kind of like the exercises that they had back in the day. I don't know if they still do this thing where you fall backwards and somebody catches you, That's kind of what it feels like a lot of times. Like, you don't know where the provisions are coming from, but God always provides. And that's the thing I think we miss sometimes is we trust in our own understanding and not leaning on God's understanding and what, who God is, because it's bigger than you can ever imagine. It's an incredible clearness, is what most people who see God, so to speak, is. It's an energy of incredible clearness. And all of this is part of God's creation. All of this, even the storms and the natural disasters and the things that we look at and go, oh God, that's horrible. The thing is, it's all in God's hands. And we don't live on this planet forever anyway. Sometimes we live like we're never going to die. And it's just a part of life. And the thing is, it continues. It's just a transition. It's a passing from one realm to another, from the physical realm to the spiritual realm. And I can tell you that no matter how bad you've had it, no matter how bad the loss that you've endured, no matter what kind of loss that you've endured, we're all going to face loss. We're all going to face death of a loved one, of ourselves, of people mourning us when we're gone. One of the things I talk about in, I guess my last book, Empowering Resilience, is I wrote my own eulogy. It's kind of a living document. It's like my own biography about myself and my life up to the point until I'm checked out. And I have that kind of in a special folder of this is what I want read at my funeral one day. And I talk about in the book before that, that I wrote, An Intentional Optimized Life, of imagining yourself at your own funeral. What would people say about you? And not that their opinion matters, but like, would they say you were a good person? Would they say that, like, just imagine that you're sitting there in the pew, in the not the audience, but like in the congregation or whatever, of your own funeral, of your own like death, And what are people around you like? What's the theme? What's the energy around there? There should be laughter and joy, not tears. That's what I want for when I'm gone. And my dad has a similar wish than that. It's a celebration of life. A lot of people call it that these days. But I have officiated as a minister over weddings and funerals, but more funerals than weddings, and it's hard. It's, of course, weddings are, always happy, and then funerals. But then I've been to some funerals I've officiated where they're, having fun, and just smiling and laughing and just remembering that person. That's why they call it a true celebration of life. Again, it's nothing to fear. That's the one thing that's the unknown that nobody really has. I could say there's proof, but as far as the afterlife and what happens to us after we die, like, I've heard hundreds and hundreds of near-death experience interviews on YouTube, and also I work directly as a technical admin for NDE Radio, Near-Death Experience Radio, with Reverend Dr. Lee Whitting, and just over, I forget how many. I mean, I think it's well over 600 podcasts recorded now over the last 12 years, weekly. They release on Mondays, and it's just amazing the depth of the experience, and everybody has an individualized experience of what the afterlife is like. But what I'm saying is that you don't just go nowhere, okay? Energy has to be transferred, okay? Einstein's theory of, all that stuff, that energy has to come into the body and then leave the body when we're gone. We don't just get lost in space somewhere. I can assure you of that. I have had a spiritually transformative experiences, and then more than a few actually, but one very profound one when I was 15 years old. And then when I guess 2021, they took 3 shocks to get me back after I had a procedure done. And because my heart was in an arrhythmia and they couldn't stop it. And I had a vision. I got the same feeling I had during the STEs, or the spiritually transformative experiences, and it was just not magical. It was just it was otherworldly. It was a feeling you can't replace with any drugs or alcohol. Anything on this earth could not replace what I felt. So I can tell you that we're being held by a divine creator who loves us. But the one thing, if God ever had a need, is to be loved in return. And that's the one thing that Steve Gardepy, my friend, I've talked earlier in this series of this show, of Steve Gardepy's near-death experience, dead for about 2.5 hours in the jungle of Vietnam. And, just really unbelievable circumstances. But he's the one that really had the deepest experience I've seen about what he thought was a mean, vengeful God, and this God was just literally made up of love. And he describes God as an incredible clearness, as a lot of other NDE experiencers do. So, in every single text out there, it is the Bhagavad Gita. You've got the the Torah. You've got the Quran. You've got most every single major world religion book, and even some minor world religions. Fear not, or be not afraid. There's nothing to fear. And as tragic as all of the things that happen in this world happen, think of the legacy that you want to leave. No matter how old or young you are listening to this or watching this, think about the legacy that you want to give back to those who deserve it. Not just deserve it, but basically that you were Christ's hands and feet. That you were God's vessel of hope to somebody. And I recently did an interview. I'm getting ready to release on both podcasts with Larry Wassoon, Mr. Whitetail, hunted every continent except for Antarctica. Incredible person. Jackson and I have had the chance to visit with him in person. He's one of my clients. I produce this podcast, DSC's Campfires with Larry Wassoon. And anyway, he's known as Mr. Whitetail in the hunting industry. I know not all of you guys hunt, but he's a very well-known outdoor celebrity that's 77 years old and still just, fully booked schedule. Just loves to be on the go. And, one of the last things he said at the end of the podcast I'm getting ready to release, maybe before this one even, is that if I'm remembered for something that nobody remembers me personally for, but they learned something from me, or their grandfather learned something from me and taught the children something that they read in an article or saw on one of his TV shows or heard on one of his podcasts, as somebody, in an interview said, right? That was enough. That's part of the legacy we leave behind. Make it a positive one. Make today count. Make tonight count in this case. Make a difference. Be the change that you want to see in this world, such as Mahatma Gandhi said very, very, well. It is be the change you want to see in the world. Don't just complain that things should be different and, the change and everything like that and all these kind of things. No. Don't do that. Don't be that person that's sitting there going, oh, well, No. Just, again, are you trying to fan the flames of disaster in life? Or are you trying to heal the wounds of the sick and the poor and those in prison and all those people that we are called to serve that are the least of these? And the response and the recovery effort around this area has been absolutely overwhelmingly amazing. I'm not just talking about, the police and the fire department and everything like that. No, it's people that have heard about Sandy Creek Ranches, our little area here, and just came in droves. On Saturday, the place was just packed. Sunday was pretty packed too, but there was some weather, and we kind of not as many people showed up. Kind of a day of rest, I guess. But it was amazing how many people showed up to just help with chainsaws and pickaxes and shovels and their own excavators and tractors and, any kind of heavy equipment, skid steers, any of those kind of things. Donate their own fuel, donate their own time. In fact, Rodney, here next to me, like he ended up, my landlord, he used his tractor for 2 days straight, just pushing brush and just, volunteering, doing his thing. Because he's retired and everything like that, and it was just going to lend a hand, and then somebody, I don't even know who it was, came and filled up his tractor with diesel, and they didn't have to do that, but they wanted to encourage him and thank him for his support of that community in the cleanup stages. It's going to probably take years to clean all this up. I try to say this as morbidly, or just as least morbidly as I possibly can. There were cadaver dogs out there this weekend, a mile away, less than that, trying to still search for and recover. It was first a rescue mission and then just recovery. Kerrville, had cadaver dogs, and then, we did over here, where they found some dead bodies on, that have been washed up into the brush, and we're talking snakes and mosquitoes and all these amazing people, volunteers going through and searching for the other victims of this flood that didn't make it, in the brush, so they could, give them a proper burial, and dignity. I think that's one thing we all deserve when we enter this world and when we leave this world, because we come into this world with nothing and then we leave this world with nothing. All right, what matters is the dash, the space between, the part that we so much take for granted about influencer status and how many likes I got on this video and how many subscribers. Again, when you're gone, it doesn't matter. How much money you made. Okay, great. Did you spend time with your family? Were you a great dad? All right. It doesn't matter how much money you made as long as you're covering your basic essentials. If you made a lot, 8 figures, and your son hates you or your daughter is mad at you because you just weren't present. Again, concentrate on the most important things. Concentrate on making today count, because today is all we have. The present moment is all we really have. And use the tools that you have in front of you, the resources that you have. Use what you've got. And help other people to be a blessing to other people. All right? Be a blessing so other people can pay it forward and be a blessing. Don't get caught up in all this other crazy stuff that doesn't matter. Okay? Politics, news. I hardly watch the news. I watched it a little bit the other day, I guess for 10 minutes or whatever, and all the stuff on there was about the floods and everything on the national news, and I finally had to turn it off because I've got to protect my mental health. The news is mainly all, if it bleeds, it leads. And that's unfortunate, because a lot of times things like this flooding issue, that happened here, that devastated a lot of people's lives, they're going to have a new normal one way or the other. Doesn't matter how bad it was, how many people died. That does not matter as much as the fact that the people that are left here, that are, that survived this, there's no starting from scratch when you start from experience. So there's no starting over. It's just stuff. And it's just a reminder to me about, again, the few things that matter in life. Not everything, okay? And the fact that the most important people are the people in your life that you love. Tell them you love them. In fact, before you, as you get done listening to this podcast, pick up the phone and text somebody you haven't texted in a while. Okay, let them know you're thinking about them. If you have your parents still alive, God bless you. Tell them you love them. I tell mine I love them all the time. I still have my mom. I still have my dad. They divorced when I was 5, but I still have a very good relationship with them. Your children, I know you may come home and there's stuff all over the place. You got young kids and they're crying and all that. I know, I've been there. Okay. I know I've just had one kid, but still I know that stress. I know that feeling. again, man, hug them. They may think that you're a little bit weird when you hug them, but they're still here. They're still yours. And they're a gift. Okay? And you are a gift in your own unique way through the time we live in. You are a gift. Never forget that. You are amazing and unique. And there'll never be another one of you in the history of the universe, in the history of time. Unique DNA, just like, everybody else has unique DNA, but you were born with special gifts. You were born with special talents and abilities that you can use for the greater good of helping other people. Okay? Be a blessing to somebody else so they can be a blessing. And that's really the Trojan horse of this whole podcast and the social media stuff that I do. Look, I'm trying to inspire you to go inspire somebody else. I'm trying to sprinkle sunshine on your day or night, and so you go sprinkle sunshine on somebody else's. I want to spread hope by the spoonfuls, and I want to give you the peace that goes beyond all human understanding by telling you that if you trust, if you let it all go, if you cast off your burdens to God, which is hard to do, it's hard to trust, it's hard to fall backwards sometimes on the grace of the Creator, but He will not let you down. That is my testimony. God will not let you down. God may surprise you the way that God shows up, but God's always going to show up. Okay, it's definitely been the case for my life, and I want it to be the case for yours. I want you to have an awesome day. I want to thank you guys, especially on TikTok, for subscribing, liking, following, sharing with your friends, whatever. Thank you guys. There's a whole bunch of people that joined tonight, which is great. I had no idea this many. That's great. I guess my last live was a hit. I don't know. But I'm going to release it. Oh boy, there goes my camera. I knew once I hit the table that would be it. So you guys got to see me have a little blooper there. But really, I just want you to share hope and be hope for somebody, okay? Be the hands and feet of Christ for somebody else. That was the most inspirational thing, just seeing the whole community of people. Probably a lot of them live far away, haul up their heavy equipment and spend their, money on fuel and everything else and diesel for the heavy equipment and that kind of stuff, just to come help, just to volunteer. Just an overwhelming amount of people with chainsaws, and it was just so inspiring that we have the resilience to move on after an absolute tragic disaster. And this isn't the only disaster that we'll see, it certainly hadn't been the first. But don't waste your life sitting there complaining and moaning and bitching about everything that is wrong with the world when you can do something to help and be light to somebody else. Because I can guarantee you that in some form or fashion, you can't outgive light. You can't outgive love. It comes back. It's the law of attraction. Whatever you want to believe about that's fine, but it's real. Okay? The universe energy has to go out, and it also comes back. Okay? It's not just somehow like, this thing, I do all good, I never get anything done for me. No. You're not trusting enough in the things that are meant for you. And maybe holding on to people, and things and stuff and energy that is not meant for you. And sometimes you have to get rid of the energy that is not meant for you to accept the energy that is meant for you. Okay? To accept the gifts that God has for you. You gotta let go sometimes of the one thing you're holding on to the tightest. Okay? Some of you guys can read into what I mean there. If it's a relationship, if it's a career choice, if it's anything like that. Again, life is too short. That's the one thing that just really made me think. The brevity, the shortness, like the fact that life is not, tomorrow's not guaranteed. Because there's a lot of people that they're burying right now all over this area that thought they had tomorrow. Some thoughts. So, thank you guys again. I try not to self-promote too much on this, but because, there's a bumper at the end that kind of talks about my stuff. But DustinsProjects.com if you want to see all my podcasts I produce and books I've written and all that stuff. DustinsBooks.com is my Amazon Seller Central author page. Has some books that I've written and then some books that I've been producing for some other people. And also, you can find me on all the social media stuff, just my name or at Dustin's Projects. It's my YouTube channel and Instagram and TikTok's at Dustin Vaughn Warncke, but I think in Threads too. I'm not really on Threads that much. I probably should be, but anyway, and then reach out to me, businesswithdustin.com or at businesswithdustin for anything else. Thank you guys so much for taking the time, for watching, reading, listening. God bless you guys so much, and have an awesome day. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to The Empowered Life with Dustin Vaughn Warncke. To learn more about Dustin, please visit his creator hub at dustinsprojects.com. Warncke Enterprises, Dustin's very own digital services company, can be found at businesswithdustin.com, and his books are available at either website or at dustinsbooks.com. Audio presentations of each of Dustin's latest books can be found on YouTube and streamed at no cost. Please subscribe to the Empowered Life podcast on your favorite podcast app, and thank you for your support and sharing this show with a friend.